So for those of us who do not know who are you and what do you do?
Well, I am Dr. DeAndre Jones, a member of the Fayetteville City Council, and I appreciate you having me with you this morning. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Joyner, Arkansas, really small town in northeast Arkansas, 30 miles north of Memphis. And when people ask me where I'm from, I always have to start with either Memphis or Osceola. We're 17 miles south of Osceola, but that's where I'm from. Graduated from Rivercrest, went to the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, where I received my education, worked for a U.S. congressman, served on the city council in my hometown, and life circumstances brought me to Fayetteville, and I've had some challenges along the way, but nonetheless, I'm here serving, preparing for my second term on the Fayetteville City Council.
Great. Okay. Can you tell us about your childhood growing up?
Absolutely. I grew up the oldest child. Joyner is about 500 people, very small. I experienced challenges. I think the challenges that most young Black people face in rural Arkansas, poverty, single parent home, lack of resources. And one of the things that I wanted to be growing up, I wanted to be what I needed as a child, as an adult, and I wanted to make a difference. And so I feel like now I have an opportunity and I have a platform to do just that.
Okay. How did you get into politics?
That's a great question. And I think there have been many roads, right? My grandfather, he worked at John Deere, and he was the only African-American employee at the time. And I remember he would come home and he would often talk about the opportunities that he missed out on because of his race. He often talked about the importance of an education and the importance to have a seat at the table. And growing up, witnessing the challenges that we faced as a community, those of us with lack of resources. And so I felt like the only way to change that system, the way to interrupt that system and to impact that system is to become a part of that and to have a seat at the table. And that's how I became involved in politics. I believe that as those who are impacted by challenges, those who are closest to the problem, right, should be closest to the solution. And that has informed, and that continues to inform my political philosophy. So I think that's why I'm here today. That has informed my political belief over 30-something years ago, even up until now.
Are there any politicians that you looked up to when you were growing up?
Absolutely. I did. And he wasn't a politician, but Dr. King. And I think every person, white, Black, rich or poor, will say that they look up to Dr. King for many reasons, right? The resilience, everything that he stood for, his values, absolutely. But then there's a part of me and he wasn't a politician. And so you ask about politician, but I have to say this, I have to mention Malcolm X, because I think that as a group of people, we have to balance. We have to have that Dr. King and we have to have that Malcolm X. And so when you combine both of them, I believe that it's so important that I take from politicians, those politicians, including the late John Lewis. From Georgia, I had the opportunity to meet him at the Democratic National Convention back in 2012. And he was definitely an amazing man. And then, of course, as I became older, Barack Obama, of course, I can't help but say that he is definitely a role model. And Shirley Chisholm, I think about her, and President Bill Clinton from our own state, the work that they've done. I look up to all of them because they did one thing that I feel like that's very important for all of us to do, especially those of us in public office, and that is put people first. And when you look at their platform, you will know that they put people first. And so, again, that informs my political belief. And I believe that that is why their legacy, the foundation that they laid, has continued to impact this country because they put people first. And so those are, they come to mind. But again, I think that it's so important that when we talk about role models, or when I talk about role models, I can't help but think about Dr. King and Malcolm X because they fought for the same reasons. They had a different approach, but I think both of their approaches are very much needed even today.
Where do you think the disconnect lies between young people and politics?
That is a great question. And I believe that the burden, the responsibility is placed upon the politicians, the elected officials. You gave me this platform, this opportunity to share the importance of voting to the beat. My role, of course, is to advocate for the community. My role, of course, is to put the needs of the people above my own. But also my role as an elected official is to create policies that's going to change your trajectory. It's going to change your quality of life. And I believe that those policies have to be relative. They have to be relevant for you. As politicians, as elected officials, we have to meet people where they are. So one of the things that I believe that we have failed to do consistently, and I say me, elected officials, a vast majority of us, during elections, we come around and we talk to people. And I think the biggest mistake has been talking at people. But I think what we should do, and what I've done that's been very, very, very efficient, listening to people. And I think that that is one of the ways that we can create policies that are relevant and that will change their quality of life. And prime example, giving examples to young people. The issues that young people are facing as an elected official on a city level, there are numerous issues, right? One of the issues, of course, that we dealt with here in Fayetteville was marijuana arrest. And so that was impacting African Americans in a larger number. Well, we were able to work with the police department, and so that's no longer an issue. So looking at laws that are negatively impacting young people from all walks of life and saying, okay, what can we do to change this? Because your generation, right? Things have changed. And I feel like as elected officials, we have to meet you where you are. And I've said that earlier. And again, going where you are, barbershops, these opportunities, every opportunity that I get, I'm always reaching out to barbershops. How can I partner with you? Because I want to hear what you have to say, because I'm your representative. I'm your voice. I'm your advocate. And I can't advocate for you. I can't represent you if I don't know what your needs are. So I believe that, again, I'll say this time and time again, we have to, as elected officials, it is our responsibility to reach out to you and to give you the space to have for dialogue, to communicate, to listen to you in various capacities, whether it's barbershops, whether it's these opportunities, going on radios, going to schools, going on wherever they are, or inviting them into spaces. I'm going to be hosting a community conversation in January at Levels, and it's based on President Obama's My Brother's Keeper. And one of the things that I want to do is I want to use my platform as a council member to create opportunities for young people, for young Black men, because we know that when we look at research, for various reasons, there are a lot of gaps. There are a lot of disparities in that group. And so I believe that we have resources. And when we talk about the sky is the limit, that's great. We all know that. But before our young people can reach the sky, we have to be educated on what are the barriers. I can tell you all day long, man, you know what? You can make it happen. You can make it happen. You're wonderful. I'm sure that you've heard this, Kelvin, your whole life. You're great. You're wonderful. But how many people have said, Kelvin, what's stopping you? That's the thing. You can tap into greatness all day, But you realize that your talent, but how many people, I mean, I see your talent, I see your work, I commend you on it, but not one time did I ask you, what's keeping you, what's your biggest challenge, what's your barrier to going higher? What are your dreams? So if the sky is the limit, how can I utilize my platform and my resources to help you get there? So this, My Brother's Keeper, is an opportunity for me to do that as it relates to resources in our city. We have a ton of resources, whether it is mental health, whether it is helping start businesses, whatever the barriers are, we have resources. So the sky can be the limit. But if we don't create or meet you where you are, then as a politician, then the disconnect will remain. And building trust too. I mean, a lot of people don't trust politicians, and rightfully so, because we see what happens. And so I feel that, again, those individuals who I mentioned as my mentors or the people that I look up to, they even though they weren't perfect, I don't think anybody's asking for perfection. I just think that they're asking for someone to create a pathway where they can experience the life that they need and the life that they deserve, a meaningful and focused quality of life. And so I think that it's fair. And I feel that a lot of young people feel that they're not getting that. And the reason that you're not getting that is because you're not being heard. When was the last time you had a conversation with a politician in your entire life?
Never.
Okay. The things that you need in your life. How old are you, Kelvin? 34 years old. Okay. So there are so many laws in this country, in this community, in this state that impact you. But if you had an opportunity to talk to an elected official about those laws and how they have negatively impacted you, you would have a lot to say, wouldn't you? So the opportunity to meet you where you are, you see the value in that, right?
Right.
Absolutely. So that's why it's so important that politics and hip hop, and the reason I say hip hop is because we know that rap music and hip hop and sports, that's the conduit for a lot of Black men.
I want to know your opinion about how you feel about the Black community, where we are today. Sometimes you hear these things about the Black community, angry race and emotional race, and you hear these terms that are thrown around on the internet about the Black race, and where do you think that anger stems from? And like I said, how do you feel about the Black community today? Are we improving? Are we getting better?
It all depends. I think that, and Kelvin, that's a great question. And I think that it depends on the lens that you're looking from, right? A lot of people feel that the election of Barack Obama is a sign, is a reflection of the improvement that we've made. I think a lot of people will say that Black people are more educated than ever before, right? So I think that we have made some improvements, but overall, I feel that we have, although we've made improvements and we've made some adjustments, I still believe that there's a lot of progress to be made. And you mentioned anger, you mentioned frustration. I feel as if when a group of people have been oppressed for so long, what do you expect? When you think about when you're hungry, when you are deprived of your basic need, hunger, food, you get frustrated, right? So when there has been generations, years of systemic oppression collectively. And I mentioned, we've had Barack Obama. We've had some wins in our community. But we've suffered. I think it's fair to say that we've suffered more L's than we have wins. I do. And I think that's part of the frustration. And I believe that I've heard this, and I know that you've heard it more than me. Get it how you live. So I believe that it's what happens is people have to survive. So they result to getting it how they live. And it's unfortunate, but we have to address all of that. We have to address the oppression. So when you talk about the state of Black America, you have to oppress. If you talk about the advancements and the success that we've experienced, you have to talk about the oppression that has been systemic or that has been historic, and the oppression that we experience right to this day. And so I believe that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I believe that elected officials, policymakers in this country, I believe that I know that we have a responsibility, because when you look at employment rates, when you look at business, economic opportunities, where are we? So systemic oppression, it's still real, it's still relevant for us. And African Americans, for the most part, are living day to day. A lot of us apathetic, feeling like whoever wins the presidency, it's not going to really matter to us because we've been oppressed for so long. And so that attitude of apathy is legitimate, because we have to understand, look at some of our neighborhoods. I mean, for so long, we've been denied. And it's not that, I don't think that we're being victims. I think that this is reality. And I think that we have every right to complain, because our neighborhoods, our lives are not improving the way that they should. So I think that we celebrate the wins, but we continue to fight for equity. I think that's what we have to do. And I believe that, Kelvin, it's very important for us to have young people involved in this race, in this fight. It's very important. You're 34, your peers, your friends, your talents, your abilities, it's time that they're used to elevate our community.
Okay. Well said, well said. You mentioned Martin Luther King, and what do you think what is the overall theme that Martin Luther King wanted to get across? Not just equality. He had mentioned something about, because he tell this story. When I see interviews about him, he tells this story about he was on an airplane and a man next to him said, why doesn't the black man pick himself up by his bootstraps? And Martin Luther King said to the man, how can a bootless, I think he said a bootless man, how can a bootless man, do that? You know what I mean? We don't have the straps to, pick ourselves up with. Do you think that Martin Luther King was trying to, in his last years, he was really talking about making, the economy of the black man, making money, starting your own businesses, entrepreneurship. I think he was trying to get that across. How do you feel about that?
I believe that you are absolutely right. And I believe that when I think about Dr. King, I think about the last years of his life. And the last years of his life, you said it, was a reflection of economic empowerment. And I think that we all know the influence that carries, right? And I believe that was, in a nutshell, a large part of the reason why he was assassinated. Because when you start talking about giving people economic opportunities, money, resources to improve their lives, then sometimes people feel as though that's going to impact them. And that could interrupt this illusion that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And that also interrupts that delusion of pulling up your bootstraps. Well, when you have no shoes, how can you do that? And so I feel that Dr. King, and it's to your point, in Dr. King's last days, economic opportunity, he realized, and I did some work with the National Poor People's Campaign, and he realized that poor people, white and black, from all walks of life, that this country, the vast majority of Americans were poor. And if they got together, what would happen? So he was onto something. It is a moral responsibility for an elected official to do the right thing, to interrupt poverty. It is a moral responsibility for us to make sure that people are housed. It is a moral responsibility for us to make sure that everyone has enough to eat. It is a moral responsibility to make sure that the basic needs are being met, that individuals have resources and access to the basic needs. It is not the thinking of being able to pull up by your bootstraps is not a moral response. That's not moral thinking. If you think about how this country was constructed, then that's not possible. But what is possible is democracy and the way democracy should work. If democracy worked the way that it should work based on the Constitution, then we would be able to adhere or to deliver on that moral responsibility that we have and the America that Dr. King advocated for. But we haven't done that. So I believe to your point, economic opportunity. I think that that's what Dr. King was talking about, whether it was starting an own business, whether it was the government doing its role in creating or giving, providing equity or giving or helping usher in resources that's going to help individuals, that's going to help them economically, whatever it was, that was a problem for other people as it relates to, again, the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. So I believe that was part of the reason that he was taken out of here, because that's very powerful. I mean, to give the oppressed resources. Imagine what happens when poor people are given when individuals who are economically disadvantaged, what happens when they get resources to change their life? It changes everything. And so he knew that. There's so much power in a lot of the things that we do. But do you know the biggest, the most substantial is economic opportunities? And that's for all people. And so you mentioned something about small businesses. And that is something that we're doing here in Fayetteville. I really want to connect African-American men to resources to help get small businesses. Because I can look around here and I see the talent. And that's the talent's not the issue. It's the resources. So we have them here. And as your city council member, I'm partnering with different organizations to make sure that happens.
I want to ask you about the women of our country.
Mm-hmm.
We just had this election,
mm-hmm.
and abortion was a big thing, a big topic of this recent presidential election. Women are echoing, how can men tell us what to do with our bodies? They're echoing this all across the nation.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels like, their voices are being compressed for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is? How do you feel about that? Women's rights and women not being heard as much as men are.
Great question. As an advocate for equal rights for everyone, I listen. And I see what I can do to change that and to make a difference. I can't speak for women, but I can listen. And as a representative, as a council member, I can do what I can help. I do what I can locally, but I'm here to listen and to support them in their efforts for their rights. And I do understand everything that they're saying. It's their bodies, it's their decision, it's their choice. And whether I agree with something or not, it's not my decision to make. There are a lot of people that do a lot of things that I don't agree with, but that doesn't give me, I don't have the permission to dictate if they should do it or not. And so with that being said, I'm an empathetic person, right? I put myself in their shoes and I'm like, okay, how would I feel about this? And if I wanted to do something, I should have the legal means to do it if it's not hurting anyone. And they talk about, the fetus and things of that nature. And I do understand, certain parts of that. But however, at the end of the day, I believe that women's rights should be women's rights. And the outcry and the frustration it's justifiable. It is. And I believe that as a man who believes in equal rights for all people, I'm there to support and stand with them.
Where do you see yourself in the next 10, 15 years? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
That is a great question. Kelvin, that's very smart. Nobody's ever asked me that before, so thank you. Kelvin, I'm going to be very transparent because you said that I could be. Kelvin, my legacy, honestly, here in Fayetteville, I'm going to be very, very transparent with you. I want my ceiling to be your floor. When I say you of course, and other young Black men or just young people, period. Because there are a lot of things that I was able to do as being the first, and I won't be the last. So I want what I've done. I want you to be able to build on that and to take it further than I ever could. So that's why it's important for when they talk about the glass ceiling, my ceiling, that should be your floor. That's what I want my legacy to be. I want my legacy to be because he did, I can. My legacy doesn't have to be a street renaming. My legacy doesn't have to be any of those tangible things. The fact that I believed in someone and gave them an opportunity and that I used my platform to change the trajectory of their life, that's enough for me.
What has been your biggest accomplishment?
Oh, wow. As a city council member or just in general?
In general, the entirety of throughout your life.
Throughout my life, I would say my biggest accomplishment, the thing that I'm proud of the most, of course, would be the fact that I graduated with my doctoral, two things actually. Graduating with my doctoral degree from Oklahoma State and being elected to the Fayetteville City Council. Those are two things that I'm most proud of now. They're, I think, because they're the most recent and they were the most challenging. And they were the things that I was told that I could never do. And, when some of us are told we can't do certain things, we're going to say, watch and see. Get your popcorn, get whatever else, get your 3D glasses, watch and see. They say F around and find out, because you're going to see. And so for me, that was at that moment. So right now, it would be those two. Now, if you ask me this next year, I might say something else. But for right now, it would have to be those two because I worked very hard for those. And I also, again, it goes back to because I did, you can, and others can.
I think that education is very important. But a lot of people around my age group, I'm part of the millennials, Generation Y. A lot of my peers don't see college as being such a priority these days. They look at the internet and, we have YouTube, you can learn anything through YouTube, but, getting your degree through YouTube is not the same as getting your degree at a well-established institution like a college, university. What do you have to say to younger people like myself who, don't really value degrees and just furthering their education just because it's just something to do. It's a way of growing your mind. So I think it's very important. But what do you have to say for, the millions of people out there that don't really think the same way about education?
I echo your sentiments that an education is very important. However, I will have to say this. It doesn't mean a college education is for everyone. It depends on what you want to do. But I'm also going to say this, and I'm going to repeat Michelle Obama when she said, knowledge and education is the greatest equalizer, and it is. But it doesn't always mean a formal education. There are a lot of people out there that have made a lot of money, that have made great livings for themselves without an education, and we can't dismiss that. However, there are a lot of people out there that have an education that have done extremely well. But I do believe that whatever you decide to do, whatever you decide to become, develop your craft through education. Whether that's CEUs, whatever it is, always be open to learning. I will never sit here or stand here and say a college is for everyone, because it's not. But learning is. College is expensive. It's not for everyone, but everyone deserves knowledge. And so I appreciate the so many different opportunities for people to learn. But in your craft now, I'm sure that you can. There are so many different trainings, which those trainings they're considered as continuing education. It may not be a college education, but ongoing training to develop your craft, to make you the best person that you should be in this field. So I advocate for that. I do, but I get it. I have friends who didn't darken the college door, and they make six figures or seven figures, and they learn trade. They go to trade schools. I mean, to be a businessman, you don't have to have that. So, they're always they always keep their mind open to learning. And again, it just doesn't mean a college education, like training, training, just whether it's online or taking advantage of constantly learning and growing.
Okay. You mentioned Michelle Obama, and it got me thinking about, she mentioned in her latest book that she put out, I can't remember the name of it. I think it was Becoming, or I think that's what it was. She mentioned in that book, she had a friend that she went to school with, I think law school, or, they went to school with each other. And her friend didn't really, take school that well, didn't take it too seriously. But Michelle was mentioning that she was always in the books because, she wanted to, reach these heights that she has, reached in her life. And she was just saying that her friend wasn't really serious about, having these big end goals that she had. So she really just played throughout, her schooling. But later on, her friend ended up dying at an early age. I want to say in her late 20s or something like that, or maybe early 30s. I forgot her name. But she mentioned, she was like, whoa, I was spending all my time hitting the books and really not living life. And she was. And, look at the outcome. She died early, but she lived a full life. How do you feel about that? Are we using our time wisely? Like, how should we be, using our time while we're alive right now?
Kelvin, oh my goodness, that's another good question. And we talked about this at work the other day. And I believe that we don't know how much time we have, but the time that we do have, I suggest that we make the best of it. So to your point, there's nothing wrong with working hard, but enjoying yourself along the way. I often say this, two things can be true at the same time. Have you ever been doing something that you love doing, that you consider hard work, but you had fun at the same time? I have, but then there are moments that I have to grind and I can't. But I think that you're right. Achieving a balance and realizing that I have one life and I need to enjoy it. And not getting caught up so much in the day-to-day grind of making it, of being successful or getting this degree, or enjoy life along the way. Even when I was campaigning, right? At one point, I became so focused on winning. And I said, wait a minute, chill. I need to enjoy the journey. And so I was able to enjoy the journey, even going to work every day. I'm learning to enjoy the journey along the way, because you're right. We don't know when we're going to take our last breath. And so in learning to, again, work hard, but enjoy life along the way. And that, for me, I often vacations. I go on vacations. I realize, hey, let me push back, because at the end of the day, if something happens to me and I can no longer do this, they're going to find someone else to fulfill these roles. So let me take care of myself. And I'm a huge advocate for that. So absolutely, learning to balance it and learning to make enjoying life a priority. It's just as valuable as working hard, and learning to balance the two.
Do you have any philosophies that you have created for your life that, any rules that you live by? You've mentioned some here today, but do you have any others that you, like any mantras that you tell yourself when you're in like a depressed state or unmotivated? How do you push yourself through those states that you may get in?
A bad day doesn't mean a bad life. I'm a neat freak. And some days I feel like I gotta clean. And some days I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get in this bed. Some days I can barely find the bed, but I can find just enough space to get in it, curl up, and go to sleep. I'll deal with the messiness tomorrow. Because I've learned that it can wait. I'm a neat freak, but I can't let that consume me. Right now, I'm stressed out, and cleaning, nothing's going to help me but getting in bed and resting. And so, but learning, a bad day doesn't mean a bad life. And I don't lose, I learn. I learn. And I think about everything in my life. And I'm like, did I lose? I really learned from that. I either learned not to do it again or do it in another way, but there was a lesson that I learned from it that helped my life. And that's one of the things that I really, 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 I focus on that a lot, because I've taken a lot of L's, but I don't call them losses. I'd say learning opportunities. And it's kind of like gambling, I went to Vegas once and I lost $20. And I was like, man, I ain't gambling no more. Hey, I'm done. I'm out. And it's because I lost $20. So for me, that was a learning experience, not to gamble. And so I think it's different for all of us, but I'd look at them as learning opportunities. And I don't get so depressed, because when you learn from something, you don't take it as a loss. Think about it. Think about the things. At some point, I challenge you to think about that, to think about learning opportunities opposes losses. And you'll see, hopefully, you'll see that, it's different. It's a different, that different perspective will hopefully motivate you.
Do you have any last words of wisdom that you would like to get out there to younger people, potential younger voters, people that want to get more involved in the local local politics and politics in general? Anything that you want to say to these people?
Absolutely. I want to say that you have to, at some point, because if you don't become engaged in the system's going to overwhelm you. And voting is one way, and that's a great way, but also running for office. And I know that's, when I say that to people, they're like, oh my God. But engagement just doesn't, there's so many ways to be engaged. And speaking out and visiting with your politician, scheduling a meeting with the mayor. We have a new mayor in Fayetteville. You could schedule a meeting with her. You get on the internet, go to your phone, or go to the city hall and you have, that is, you live in Fayetteville, right? So that is your city hall. You pay taxes. You have just as much right in that city hall as I do, and I'm an elected official. Knowing that, realizing who are the key players in this. Because I'm going to say this, there have been a lot of African-American men, and just young men, period. And because of my relationship building with the police department and the legal system and the judges, we've been able to really help them. And that's major, because had we not been present, the outcome would have been different. So I want you to know that, and I want young people to know that it's serious. It matters to your life. It's very relevant. You may think that it doesn't. Minimum wage increases, the cost of food, the cost of gas. All of that is contingent upon who you put in office. And I know you feel that you're so far removed from it, but just imagine if the things that were so dear to you and that you needed in life, and just young people, period, just imagine that the minimum wage increase, all the things that are dear to you and that you need to survive. Just imagine if you got the wrong people in office and they took those things away from you. That could very well happen. And this is not a scare tactic. This is reality. That could very well happen. But do you know that you can do something about it? Now, you never heard me say none of this was easy, did you? It's not. But you've done hard things before, because this is hard. Coming up with all this and doing this, you probably never thought that you could do it. And when you did it, you probably thought that it was hard, but you did it and you're doing a damn good job of it. This is no different. You can do hard things. So I want young people to know it's hard, but it's worth it, because literally your life depends on it.
If people want to get in contact with you, how would they?
Facebook. I'm on Facebook quite often. Instagram and City Council, City Hall, and my phone number. I have my number, my personal number. They can text me anytime. I have a meeting with a young man tomorrow about civic engagement, and so and it's my real number. It's not any other number. It's my real number, because I believe in accessibility. So Facebook, Instagram, and my email and phone, and I do respond, and because I have to, because again, it's my moral responsibility to make sure that I do what I can to advocate for you and your well-being.